Welcome back. The Defense Innovation Unit is 5 years old now. 40% of the office's contracts have made it to production in its first 5 years. Mike Brown is director of the Defense Innovation Unit at the Department of Defense. Mike, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. Congratulations on your first 5 years. What stands out to you as the most important contribution that you and your team have made to the Defense Department in its first 5 years?
Well, thanks, Francis. It's great to be here, so thank you for having me. You know, I think you'd have to say that DIU was started as an experiment that Ash Carter formed 5 years ago is really working. So what stands out to me is that we've scaled this. Not only have we implemented it successfully, but we've scaled this operation. And you can see that in our most recent annual report. We started a record number of projects last year, 23. That was up 35%. We received almost 1,000 proposals from commercial companies to bring their solutions into the Department of Defense, thereby saving taxpayers dollars because those are commercial solutions, much less expensive than something that's custom. And those came pretty broadly across the US from 46 different states. And most importantly, 11 solutions, or what we call prototypes, were transitioned to the military. So that represents new capability from new vendors. That was up 22% year over year. And in fact, over our 5-year history, we've introduced 70 new suppliers to the Defense Department.
I would suggest as well, Mike, that one of the most important contributions DIU has made is driving culture change all across the department, because we're seeing other organizations inside DoD taking the techniques that you and your colleagues use and applying them in their own situations. Has that been intentional? Was that one of the original goals that Secretary Carter laid out when he stood up DIUX originally, or was that just a residual effect, do you think?
I think you'd have to say that's a bit of serendipity, and I think it's a wonderful thing. It's really going to be important as budgets become tighter at the Defense Department over the next several years for us to take advantage of commercial technology. Not only is more of the modernization priorities that we need going forward commercial, things like AI, autonomous systems, cyber, areas like that. But again, when we use these commercial solutions, we save taxpayer dollars. And I think that's going to be critical so that we can save Defense Department dollars for those technologies the Defense Department in turn needs to develop on its own, things like hypersonics or directed energy.
You mentioned your annual report. We have a link to it at govmatters.tv/resources. It lays out, I think, eloquently what you've accomplished in the first 5 years and not just on an annual basis. What do the next 5 years look like, Mike? Is it just a matter of scaling what you've laid out, what you've already done, or do you want to go to places where DIU has not gone before?
I think a little bit of all of those. Certainly we want to scale what we've been able to do a little bit further. We'd like to see that transition rate increased. We've been able to translate 35% of the projects that we started finding their way to a finished solution. This past year we increased that to 43%, and we see no reason why that can't be 50 or 60%. So we're working on the types of things that will allow us to increase that transition rate and deliver more capability to warfighters. One of the other areas we're thinking about is how can we avoid that DoD-created valley of death when a successful vendor gets a prototype that's proven in a military application, but then we don't have the funds for it? Because as everyone listening will know, it takes 2 years to program a dollar in the Defense Department, meaning we have to start 2 years before we're going to spend that dollar thinking about where it's going to be spent. There's some interesting ideas afloat right now that would shorten that amount of time so that for these innovation projects that are ready to be scaled, we could move a lot quicker on the budget front.
What will have to happen to do that? Do you need permission from Congress? Do you need policy changes inside the Pentagon? What do you need to accomplish that, Mike?
A little bit of both. I think as the department thinks about innovation, how can we move a little bit quicker and be sensitive to this issue? But yes, we'll need some help from Congress, both authorizers and appropriators. And fortunately, there's some discussion that's happening now across both of those sets of folks, authorizers and appropriators, provide something that will allow us to scale successful innovations more quickly.
Given the discussion here in Washington about the overall size of the Defense Department budget and the expectation that it will probably either hold steady or get smaller in coming years, how much of what you're talking about, how much of what you want to accomplish in, say, the next 5 years is budget sensitive, and how much of it is just dependent on continuing to demonstrate results?
Well, I think we need to work on both. We need to improve our own execution. As I mentioned, we're increasing our transition rate. We're deepening relationships across DoD to make sure that we're working on some of the most important problems. We're even working across the interagency now. We have relationships with several groups within the Department of Homeland Security, Coast Guard, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency at DHS, NASA. So we think there's a lot of opportunity to work some projects that move across government. One of the areas that is budget sensitive for us is a new initiative that we're able to start this year. It's called National Security Innovation Capital. We really believe that there's a need for more hardware vendors for the military, and this gave us a way to start to provide a catalyst for private investment that could come in and support more hardware vendors. Most of the venture capital in our country has moved to support software. We're big fans of that because the U.S. has a comparative advantage globally in software, but there's a need for some more hardware vendors, things like batteries, quantum sensors, components for space. And we'd like to see the U.S. take a leadership role in creating some of those new vendors who would eventually be vendors for DIU projects.
Mike Brown, congratulations on the first 5 and good luck in the next 5. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Francis.